Hey there, how's it going? This is the only code email deliverability guide you're going to need in 2025. Now, real quick, who am I and why you should listen? My name's Frank, I'm the founder of Flowyo, and we send hundreds of thousands of emails on behalf of our clients every single month, so I've definitely dealt with my fair share of deliverability issues before. This video is just going to be the entire A to Z, starting from the very basics of deliverability and then moving up the ladder until we get to the most advanced concepts that me as well as all other top code email agencies are currently doing in 2025. So strap in, get ready to take notes. This video is going to be totally unfiltered, no cuts, just all my unadulterated knowledge about deliverability. Let's get into it. All right, so for a quick overview, you need to understand that there's 3 pillars in order to succeed in code email. And if you master all of them, then you're totally set. First is deliverability, which is, are you landing in the inbox? Second is list building, which is, are you targeting the correct people? And lastly is copywriting, which is, what are you actually putting in the body of the email? So I want you to think of deliverability kind of already as a solved problem. That's to say, you shouldn't overcomplicate the process. And once you get the basics down of deliverability, which we're going to go over, it's much better that you spend the rest of your time on list building and copywriting, which I'll definitely have videos on in the future as well. So the overarching idea about code email deliverability, think of it as a game of cat and mouse. So you have the cat, which is Google, Microsoft, other email providers, and then you have the mouse, which is code email senders like me and probably many of you watching. This analogy kind of matters because it puts into frame what you need to understand top level about deliverability. First is that Google and Microsoft don't announce the perfect deliverability standards ever, right? They probably have some set rules for what is determined as spam or some technical protocols, but they don't go saying those protocols because they don't want code email senders to know and therefore circumvent those protocols. Second thing is, because of that, code email is not a science whatsoever. It's more like a set of educated guesses that we're making in order to infer what ESPs, so email providers, will and will not let slide. The last thing here is all the best code emailers are doing something slightly different, so something different with their warm-up, something different with their domains, etc. But all of them are still following the same basic guidelines, so just pick one and stick to it. Don't move around too much. All right, so you're probably wondering now, how in the world are we supposed to beat these, multi-billion-dollar companies who are involved in this game? Well, there's 3 good things that are going for us. The first is that companies like Google and Microsoft, they're not necessarily chasing us, or at least we're not at the top of the food chain. So they're more so chasing all the thousands of scammers, phishers, and cyber criminals that are on the internet and are using platforms like Gmail to, take thousands of dollars from normal citizens. So that means that they're still perfectly fine with me as a normal person sending a non-spammy email to another colleague at another company, let's say. The second thing is that they can only do so much. And this is super important because Google and Microsoft, if you actually thought about it, they could probably wipe out all code emails overnight, right? They could set strict filters for every spam word. They could just eliminate code emails from domains without, let's say, a year in age. They could wipe out all authentication connections for Instantly and SmartLead. The reason why they're not doing this, and the reason why code email is probably sustainable for the foreseeable future, is because of the fact that Google and Microsoft have real customers. If they were to use these standards, then that would not only hurt code emails, it would hurt every single other person paying on the platform. And the last thing is, good offers, targeting, and copies are the best bet you have for deliverability. So before we get into even any of the technical stuff, what you need to understand is you're only not going to land in the inbox if you're continuously getting reported as spam. So in a hypothetical scenario where every single person that saw your email found it relevant, found it interesting, wanted to buy your product, then deliverability wouldn't be an issue at all. So that should be your big focus. Now, here's what a typical spam message looks like. It says, be careful with this message, and then it gives you the option to report it as spam. The reason why I'm showing this image is because when I just got started code emailing, and I'm sure many of you still believe this, I really didn't believe that people would go out of their way to click 3 buttons to manually report you. What you need to understand though is that when you're sending cold emails, because the accounts are new, because they're cold, they're not within someone's organization, this message, like these spam messages, are going to pop up far more often than otherwise. So that's why it's so easy to get reported at a much higher rate if you're doing cold emails. So the mindset you should be taking then when approaching cold email is, how can you most closely replicate human behavior? Like, for example, me sending an email to a colleague from another company, and as far away as what a spammer does. And that's basically the mindset you should be applying for everything else below. Now, let's get into the basics and the technical stuff. So the basic idea with cold email is, if you have 1,000 emails from one account, that's going to be an obvious giveaway that you're a spammer, because the average person doesn't send 1,000 emails a day when they're working. So in order to start sending thousands of emails per day at a high volume, you're going to need to distribute all of that volume across multiple channels so you can replicate more human-like behavior across your accounts. So here's an illustration of kind of what that looks like. You have multiple domains set up that you buy from Porkbun, GoDaddy, etc. And then under each domain, you set up 2 to 3 specific inboxes. So that way, you're going to have hundreds of unique inboxes with unique addresses and unique usernames that are going to send about 15 to 20 emails each. That's the basics of how cold email deliverability actually works. Okay, so how do you actually tell if your accounts are landing in spam? There's many ways to do this. So you can look at manual tests. There's like lock apps. You can do automatic tests on instantly. You can look at reply rates, open rates, etc. My advice, and the advice of tons of other top cold emailers, is just don't overcomplicate the process. Here's all you have to know. So if your reply rates are under 1%, then that probably means they're deliverability issues. And by 1% reply rate, I mean the ratio of total emails sent to total replies received. So I'm not talking about the unique contacts that have responded to you, but rather the total amount of emails you've sent in a campaign. It also includes out of office. The reason you include out of office is because these messages only trigger if you're actually landing in the inbox for the most part. So if they're not triggering, that probably means there's some deliverability problem going on in the backend. If your reply rate is above 1%, but let's say you want to get it to 3%, that's probably not going to be a deliverability issue. It's going to be an issue with those second 2 pillars, so list building as well as copywriting. So now, no matter how you actually tell if you're actually landing in the inbox or if you're landing in spam, the response will always be the same. If you're landing in spam, then stop sending from those accounts, keep them on warm up for 2 weeks, and then rotate in a fresh set of accounts that have been warmed up. And if you want to be extra safe, this is what we do. Buy 2 sets of email accounts and 2 sets of infrastructure. So both of these email accounts and infrastructures should be warming up at the exact same time. So if one infrastructure goes down, then you can just automatically rotate in the second without any wait time. All right, let's get into your specific options for purchasing these accounts now. So before you set up any email accounts, you're going to need to set up the domains. And the idea here is you're not supposed to use your main domain because that's going to be responsible for all your emails for daily interactions. So you definitely don't want that burned. So for cold email, you should use domains that are adjacent to your main your main domain, and that also redirect to the main site. So for example, because my domain is flowyo.com, then I should be using emails like useflowyo.com, tryflowyo.com, and flowyoheadquarters.com. So Porkbun, Namecheap, and GoDaddy, they're all great choices in terms of buying domains. We're using Porkbun right now just because it's the easiest, but it doesn't matter in terms of deliverability whatsoever. So after you buy the accounts, you now need to set up the email accounts on them. So we recommend setting up 3 email accounts per domain. So again, if I were to have a domain which is useflowyo.com, then the email accounts I should set up are frank@useflowyo.com, frankyan@useflowyo.com, and frank.yan@useflowyo.com. So each email account, which is the ones I just mentioned, can be set up under one of 3 email providers. So you have, Google, which is Gmail, you have Microsoft, which is Outlook, and then you have specific private SMTP servers, If you're just starting out, exclusively use Google and Outlook, and I would recommend splitting it in half. So 50% of your volume is coming from Google, 50% of your volume is coming from Outlook. The reason for this is because obviously Google and Outlook are the two most reliable ESPs in the space. They make up probably more than 80% of all traffic being sent in emails right now. So they're just the most reliable and credible to use. That being said, Google and Outlook accounts are incredibly expensive if you're buying them natively. So each Google account right now costs about $7. Each Microsoft account costs $6. So what that means is if you have 100 different email accounts, that's going to get real pricey real quick. So you're thinking $700 per month, not accounting for domain and platform costs that you're also going to probably need to spend at least another $300 on. So what's the solution to this price problem? It's to use resellers. So resellers use many methods to get their email accounts for cheaper. So some of those are setting them up from a different country with cheaper prices, negotiating bulk deals with Google and Microsoft, as well as using legacy accounts. So there's hundreds of different email resellers on the market. It's really, really important to choose the good, high-quality ones. And the reason is many of these resellers are setting up their email accounts on IPs that aren't exactly credible. So maybe non-US IPs, maybe they have very slow communication. They deliver the accounts very slowly, which from first-hand account is just an absolute pain when you're trying to get emails out. So the two resellers I recommend are premium inboxes for Google and Hypertide for Microsoft. So premium inboxes offers about $3 per email account, and if you buy thousands of email accounts, it gets significantly cheaper. They deliver in 12 hours. They also have a self-serve platform that looks like this, so it makes it super easy to buy or cancel your orders. For Microsoft, I would recommend Hypertide. We've been using Hypertide for a good while now. Their Microsoft setup is pretty unique in that instead of setting up 3 accounts per domain and then sending 15 emails from each of those, they're instead setting up 50 accounts per domain and then sending 2 emails from each of those accounts. So their logic is that real businesses don't only have 2 people, right? They probably have 50 different people, and each person is probably not sending an incredibly high volume of cold emails. They also, again, have a self-serve platform, which makes buying, setting up redirects, and changing usernames just incredibly easy. And I say firsthand, the quality of your reseller in terms of how easy it is to set up those factors is super important, because if you have a bad reseller, that's going to take away weeks of your time just getting the account set up. And then there's also going to be tons of manual glitches, so definitely prioritize that. Don't cheap out. All right, so now that you have the accounts, here's the 80-20 for the deliverability of landing in the inbox. So if you understand the 5 things I'm about to talk about, then you're basically already 80% of the way there for deliverability. If you just got started, you can spend your time on other things before coming back to this video. All right, so 5 things. First is warming up your accounts. The idea of warm-up is you can warm up accounts on SmartLead and Instantly, which are cold email sending platforms, and they're basically ways to simulate human behavior for about 2 weeks or so before you actually send a real email. You can see in the image below, here's the settings we use, and I'm actually going to make this a bit bigger. So you can see 30 warm-up emails per account. We have a 5 email daily warm-up. We'll randomize it between 20 and 30, so it's not as easy for ESPs to catch whether we're using warm-up or not. And then we'll use a 50% reply rate. So this is slightly different between SmartLead and Instantly. This is SmartLead, but as I said earlier, everyone is doing something different. Just find what works for you and go with it. Second thing that's important to consider is your domain age. So what I mean by domain age is the moment you buy your domain from, let's say, GoDaddy or Porkbun, that domain becomes active. And the longer your domain is active for, the more credible it becomes in the eyes of ESPs. So this is super important because if you're sending to, let's say, enterprise, then you might want to keep your domain for more than 2 weeks and just warm it up for, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks, because otherwise those enterprise accounts are just going to block your domain upfront. So here's an experiment you can do to actually test the importance of domain age. If you just use your personal email, which you've been using for years, you'll basically be able to land an inbox every single time without exception. So that just shows how powerful individual, long, real domain aged accounts are. Third most important thing is verifying your accounts. And I stress this a lot. I stressed this in the last video about Apollo. Even if you scraped with the verify tab on Apollo, you still have to verify all your leads through something else like Lead Magic or Million Verifier. So these are platforms that are basically able to run all your accounts through a verification platform, and you use the ones that are valid. Otherwise, if you don't do this, your bounce rates are going to be like 30%. Apollo's data is old, it's a little inactive, so that's why you must verify it. Fourth thing, no links, no images, no open tracking. Email providers are scared that they're using clicking on viruses, scams, or specific phishing emails. So the idea here is you only present a threat to other users if they're actually clicking on something that leaves Gmail or Outlook. That's why that hurts the deliverability so bad. And to solve this, you should go on your platform, so Instantly or Smartly, and click the Boost Your Deliverability tab. I'm sure there's something similar on Instantly. You should also have no emails, phone numbers, or websites, especially in your signature. If you really want to include a website, you can do like www.brackets.floyo.com. The reason for this is because oftentimes these are ways for ESPs to fingerprint your specific emails and identity, so not too good to do that. Last thing is DNS settings. So you want to correctly configure your SPF, DMARC, and DKIM before using each individual account. So this is basically just technical jargon, which is setting up your accounts correctly and getting them authenticated by the email servers. So you don't have to worry about this. It sounds complex, but resellers will basically set up all of this for you, so not a worry. All right, so that's the 80-20 for all cold email deliverability. Now we're gonna get into some more advanced stuff. So first thing is spam words. If you use words that are characteristically spammy or phrases that are spammy, then it's more likely that you're gonna show up in spam instead of the inbox. So what are some spam characteristics you should avoid? First is all caps. So in your subject line, make sure it's mainly using non-capitalized letters. Second is words and phrases like guarantee or 100% or free, limited access, or weight loss. These are all examples of words that ESPs pick up on because they're often associated with spamming or lots of different offers. So avoid those words. In order to know which words you should avoid, you should use this website called mailmeteor.com/spam checker. So if you put your email copy in here, it'll look something like this, where you have your email copy on the left, and then you can see all the words you need to remove on the right side. So one quick note with these types of things, it's never a binary, right? So you won't automatically land in spam just because you have one spam word in your copy. So if it's ever hard to convey your offer or really important part of your email body, like let's say you're running a guarantee and you're not using the word guarantee, that's going to be pretty hard to convey to the audience. So you really have to weigh your options in terms of whether you prioritize the messaging or the deliverability. All right, next thing we'll go over is Spintax. Spintax, if you've not heard, is a tool that allows you to create randomness in your cold email messaging. So the idea here is that Google and Microsoft each do individual things to tag certain emails in order to understand if you're sending the same email over and over again. And then if you're doing that, you're going to get penalized because it looks like you're spamming other users. So here's what Spintax does, and here's what it looks like. As you can see, for our greetings, we have multiple different variations. So hi, hey, hello, hey there, you get the point. In this case, your cold email platform, so Smartly or Instantly, is going to choose one of these words at random in the bracket, and then it's going to create the following variations. So based on this, we're going to have hey first name, hi first name, hello first name, hey there first name, etc. So right now, it seems like we only got 7 variations from that, so not much. But the good thing about Spintax and the reason it's so effective is because it's multiplicative. What I mean by that is if I did the same thing, and then under that I did how are you, how's everything, hope you're doing well, that's 7 variations at the beginning multiplied by 5 variations. So we get 45 variations in total. And then let's say we spin tax one more part of the message. So at the bottom, you can see my name is, I'm called, this is Frank. So that's going to be 7 times 5, which is 45, and then times another 5 variations we can run. So you're already up to 175 variations. So as you can see, you don't need to spin tax that much of your messaging to get tons of different variations. So to set up spin tax quickly, write your perfect email copy, and then I'd recommend just giving it to either Claude or ChatGPT. I usually use Claude because it's slightly better at copywriting. And then just tell it to give it follow either Instantly or Smartlead's spin tax formatting, and just don't do it manually because it's going to cost you tons of time. Here's some other pointers that I found when using spin tax. The first is you should focus on spin taxing multiple parts a little bit instead of spin taxing a few parts a lot. So as shown in the example above, the power of spin tax comes not from high volumes in individual variations, but rather when there's low volumes of randomness across the entire email copy. That's what's going to create the highest amount of variations. So therefore, I recommend you're aiming for 2 to 3 spin taxed parts per email. Second thing, you should not overdo your spin tax. It's easy to hit hundreds of billions of variations, but let's say if you're already at 1 million variations, that's obviously enough because you're never going to be sending more than 1 million actual emails. So every variation up to a certain point is not only going to be diminishing returns, it's also going to hurt the actual quality of your messaging because some words and some phrases are better than others. Lastly is many people forget, but you should always spin tax your signature. So this is by far the easiest way that ESPs are going to fingerprint you. So for example, here's my signature. Frank Yan, Frank Y. F. Yan, Frank FY. And then we're doing the exact same thing for the role, the company name, etc. So obviously, a quick caveat to this is if you're running a cold email agency, let's say for client, then you probably should use their exact role. In this case, I don't mind too much. So the better the deliverability, the more I'm happy. All right, next is AI personalization. So we're not going to go over how to do AI personalization in this video, but if you already know how to do it, then the simple answer is it's incredibly helpful for maximizing your deliverability. The reason is because it's everything spin taxes, but even a bit more because AI doesn't just have 3 variations per sentence. It can write, 5 or 10 or 100 different variations per copy, and that's going to be a lot more powerful and much harder to actually detect by ESPs. All right, let's go over some exceptions to the rules we've set above. So by now, you probably know that everything I've talked about is just guidelines. It's not actually definitive. And because those are guidelines, there might be things I've said above that aren't necessarily true or don't actually hold that much weight. And in many cases, you should use your own intuition to determine whether you should follow a rule. So here's a few cases I would think about. Number 1 is private SMTP servers. So they're typically on the cheaper side. So you might want to set some out if you've already figured out your offer. You're hitting a niche that's basically never hit by cold emails, and you want to keep prices low. That's a great reason to use SMTP servers. Number 2 is for warm-ups. As I said earlier, 2 weeks is the absolute minimum that you're going to need to warm up your accounts by. But if you're sending to enterprise, let's say, then expect to age your domains for up to 6 to 8 weeks before you start sending. Third is spam words. Keep them as low as possible. And it's fine to have a few spam words as long as it's necessary to convey the brunt of your offer. Fourth thing is links and images. So you should include them if the benefit of linking something, i.e. your YouTube channel, specific case studies, or maybe a free lead magnet, outweighs the probability of landing in spam. And obviously, you should use your own volition here, but it's not always bad to increase your the rates you're landing at spam by a few percentage if the amount of positive replies you're getting because of the credibility you're building from these links is significantly higher. Last thing, you should understand all of these are mere exceptions and there's tons more exceptions. The point I'm trying to demonstrate here is there's 100 million different ways to optimize every part of your cold email campaign, but you first have to learn the fundamentals. So those 5 things, until you're familiar, don't try any of these exceptions. All right, so let's go over some common questions and misconceptions about cold email deliverability. First question, does warm-up work? So the blunt answer is yes. Many people in the industry have ran extensive tests on the subject. Actually, Vibev, which is the founder of SmartLead, explained it pretty well in an interview with Nick Abram, where he said SmartLead wouldn't be investing, millions of dollars to be keeping hundreds of thousands of emails or even hundreds of millions of emails warming up at the same time. It would surely not be an investment they would be making. So they have all the data to back it up. Number 2, does using specific TLDs matters? So .com, .co, .net in terms of your deliverability. The answer here is it does matter, but not as much, as well as not in the way you think. So for deliverability, Google isn't targeting certain domains over others. But if you are sending to older, more established industries that are looking for more reputable vendors, then I think having a .com domain is definitely better just for your upfront credibility, because it's hard to trust a .net or .org, something like that. Next question, do I need to add profile pictures on my accounts? So from my experience, it's an absolute waste of time. It takes forever to do it manually, though you can do it on Google through bulk. But from what I've seen, it doesn't even show up in most of the emails, so really not worth your time. Next question, I saw an ad of a new cold email platform that was guaranteeing better deliverability than Instantly, SmartLead, etc. Should I try it? The answer is no. So unless you're an industry expert, you have thousands of dollars to spend on random stuff, or you have the time to waste and experiment, it's really not worth it. Again, Vibev explained this concept pretty well. It's very easy to set up warm-ups infrastructure on these smaller vendors if you only are doing it across 1,000 or so domains and email addresses, and you only have a few hundred users. It becomes much, much, much harder when you have hundreds of millions of email addresses sending distinct warm-up emails every day. So until a platform actually becomes established in the industry, not really much point of looking into it. Last question. In the grand scheme of things, how much does deliverability actually matter? So my answer to this is always, yes, it matters, but definitely not as much as you think. If you follow the 5 basic rules that I listed out above, you're already 80% of the way there in terms of maximizing your deliverability. Your list building, your offer, your copy, every other component of the cold email is going to matter much more after that you're actually landing in the inbox. I appreciate you watching to the end of this video. If you want to see more content like this in the future, please like, subscribe, leave what you want to see in the comments. And if you're looking for me to set up a fully done for you cold email system in your B2B business, then click the link below and set up a quick call. We'll guarantee 30 plus qualified sales calls every single month on a performance basis. That means you only pay if and after you actually take the calls that we book you. Thanks for watching.